Hello, everyone. I'm glad you're able to join us tonight. Been a big day in the world of true crime and a lot of stuff going on with the Idaho Four. We'll be covering some of that information tonight. Before we get started, as always, a little bit of housekeeping. Nightbot for our mods is still working and everything, so on the prompts we don't have to worry about. And people that's coming into the channel, um, always be respectful of all the mods and of each other. Enjoy the debates and chats. And at the end of the presentation, we'll be answering as many questions as we can. So we always look forward to that. And but a little bit about the introduction. I'm still going to be doing a brief bio for the next few shows. We do have an intro that's coming that will take care of that, and that'll be filtered out. And I just want to give y'all an update on that. I've been getting some questions about creating an introduction that would take care of that, so I don't have to repeat myself as much. And I look forward for that introduction to get here and pretty quick. But anyway, with that being said, we'll get started. All right, as always, this is Mrs. Steve, and I'm Steve. I'm a retired law enforcement. I had 20 years of service, started off in the jail, and went on the road and then went into investigations. During those 20 years, I've had all different types of training from SWAT all the way into becoming a state certified crime scene tech. Investigated all different types of crimes, from thefts up to homicides. And then when I retired and became aware of the true crime world, I decided to become an ambassador for law enforcement best I can. And so that we can have a better understanding of how law enforcement thinks, works, and we'll be covering some of the information tonight on this case with Idaho Four. All right, with that being said, if you have any information about the murders of Madison, Kaylee, Ethan, and Xana, notify law enforcement. They're still wanting tips or information regarding anything about them as the victims, and also any information you have on Brian Kohberger. Extremely important. His movements before, during, after, all contact, all information needs to be given to the proper authorities so that they'll be able to make sure justice is found for the victims. And also, as you know, he is only currently charged and is in the process of being extradited back to Idaho. That our justice system, he's innocent until proven guilty. And if there's information out there that exonerates him or otherwise, that information has to be brought to the courts, because we do not want to fail the system. If he is guilty of this, then the victims deserve justice. If there's any information out there that shows others involved or other perpetrators, or any information that confirms or exonerates him, that information has to be there to ensure that our justice system does the right thing. All right. But we're going to be concentrating a lot on Brian since he's been charged with it, and with extradition that went on today, the hearing, and everything that led up to this. When did he become a suspect? When did he get on the radar of law enforcement? And how did he get on the radar of law enforcement? There's a lot of different ways, and that especially at a certain point that would have led law enforcement and put him on that list. I know that there's a lot of speculation right now, and I'm pretty sure it's based upon some pretty firm and conclusive information about the genetic DNA links that show that he was at the crime scene. There's a lot of information out there. It hasn't been verified as of this time, but will it be shortly? Just as soon as he gets to Idaho and that probable cause affidavit is out there, it will clearly define if there's any DNA, which I expect. Like I've spoken many times, you cannot go into and commit a crime without there being some type of DNA transfer, especially when you're talking about a violent crime such as this, where there's 4 victims attacked in a very confined area, and a very violent nature, such as a knife attack or any type of edged weapon. And so there would be a transfer of evidence and of DNA, of hair, fiber, so we'll be looking at some of that information as we proceed. But if you, like I said, here's some more ways of calling in information other than phone number. You got email, and then you have the digital media links that you through the FBI. One of the first things that I really appreciated about how Moscow, Idaho handled this case. You can go to their web page and website, and they have a section just dedicated to these homicides. And they have all their press releases there. So you can just go over there and you can pull them up by date. Absolutely brilliant and so informative how open that they had this and how well they kept everybody informed on it. And I think it should be that a lot of other agencies need to step back and look at how this was handled and how this course of action that they took and the strategy that they employed and how well it worked. Now, what all played a part in this, they early on recognized that they had a serious crime, which anytime you come upon a homicide with 4 victims, yes, you will. And some departments, they may choose to work it within their own department, and some departments instantly reach out. It appears in this case, they instantly reached out, brought in every professional agency they could to handle it, and it worked out extremely well. And they were, like I said, extremely open with the investigation, giving out a lot of details and information, and still maintaining certain information close to the chest. But as you can see here, on December the 30th, that they just give you a brief arrest has been made in the regarding the Moscow homicides. And, it tells you that when the date of November 13th at 11:58 hours, they responded to a call at 11:22 King Road for the report of an unconscious individual, which leads us to the discovery of the 4 victims at the 11:22 King Road. And then they talk about that they, in conjunction with the Pennsylvania State Police, that they served the warrants and made an arrest of Brian Kohberger for the murders of those 4 students. And we'll get into some of the details of how that arrest and the dynamics of SWAT and how they would approach and possibly, it's a fine edge from the law enforcement world of how much information to share, because we don't want to give out too many tactics or information of how law enforcement works in certain areas. And so we have to be careful with that. And that's one of the reasons I really haven't covered this case in great details. I was a guest on a Mob Crew a few times on it, but as we discussed pre-show and post-show of his, that there's certain information, and I really didn't go in depth of this because it was so active and dynamic during the investigation. I felt confident that they had a suspect. I felt confident they had DNA, and I felt confident they had the right vehicle. And but there was a lot of activities that I anticipated and figured was going on in the background, and so we really didn't discuss those. And I'm not going to go into a lot of those tonight, but we will hint and look at some of those because law enforcement, when they address these homicides, they do it in a very structured manner. They're going to do those victimologies. They're going to take that behavioral analysis unit. They're going to look at what type of offender. They're going to build that profile from the crime scene. And did they do that in this case? It appears so, and it appears it was to a T, which is absolutely what we always wish and hope for that our law enforcement professionals are up to. But some of the people that Moscow brought into it, of course, they said that they have 6 detectives, they have a 5-man support staff, 46 investigators, from Moscow and located throughout the United States, and they had the behavior analysis unit. And then the Idaho State Police was there with their 13 investigators, 15 uniforms, communication teams, and forensic services. Absolutely, that is a huge attachment and a group of individuals that when you focus them upon a crime, you do anticipate that it will lead to certain developments in a case rather quickly. And we see in other cases, like with Delphi, pretty much same situation, and probably more so in Delphi, but it didn't come out with the same results. This one did. And so we have to weigh out and balance out that sometimes these strategies and these plans work out, sometimes they don't. But in this case, it worked to a T. They got an individual, a violent individual that they believe that committed these crimes, and he's off the streets due to the hard work that law enforcement did and to all the attention that was brought to it by the social media crowd, the YouTubers, everyone out there that played a part in it with responsible covering of the case. And I respect all of those and thank all of those individuals that were responsible in handling of this case, because it only takes that one person to call in those tips. And when we get to the tips part, which right here, they early on in the case, they come out and they say that they have 2,770 calls to the tip line. They have the emails, they have digital media submissions to the FBI, and how many 113 pieces of physical evidence collected and taken to the ISP crime lab. And the 113 pieces of physical evidence, of course, it's easy to go into a violent crime scene and collect 113 pieces of evidence. But they're not going to just be picking at random. They're going to be looking for specific things within that crime scene that at some parts of the crime scene that they may, they'll gather certain information and evidence and data. But as they move through it, they're also looking for those outliers, those things that appear out of place. Dave,
Hey.
$4 super sticker. Thank you for your support.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate that. But when we look at those 113 pieces, the ones that are really going to be important are those that might implicate or identify who the offender is. And those pieces of physical evidence can be anything from hair samples, fibers. It can be blood spatter, DNA, body fluids. There's so many different types of possibilities of what type of evidence could have been found. The fingernail scrapings of the victims. And when I talk about the fingernail scrapings, this is something that when the hands are bagged and they get to the lab, they'll go in there and they'll scrape those fingernails extremely well. They'll cut those fingernails, searching for if that victim had the opportunity to engage their attacker. That is a great method, and it gives the technicians and the lab technicians, as they're processing that, the ability to identify that offender. Who was the person that they had? Dark Arts by.
Hey, Dark Arts.
Good to see you. Hope you guys had an awesome Christmas and New Year, although I'm originally a big Tenor. Was glad to see the Bulldogs beat those Buckeyes.
Woo! Go Dogs!
Steve, in your opinion, what did the Idaho law enforcement do best? Man, they did a lot of things good.
That's a good question.
It is. They did a lot of great things. And a lot of our agencies, and this will be looked at. Now, did they make mistakes also? I'm absolutely positive that there were some missteps through the case. And, but here we are 7 weeks into it, 8 weeks. And now we have someone that's being extradited back to it. So, and I'll be going into some of the things later about exactly how I believe that some of this stuff came into to be and the path they took, which, there's so many things. The securing of the crime scene and getting there at the first instant and being able to secure that scene, recognizing it for what it is, and the next steps of that forensic team getting there, because it's going to come down to the forensics. The forensics that are within that house and the forensics of what's in that car. There's no two greater holders of evidence of crime scenes is, of course, where the assaults occurred. And then what did he take from where those assaults occurred from the victims back into his environment, which is his vehicle and his residence. But that vehicle being the conveyance from that took him to the crime scene and took him back to his residence or to wherever he had a staging area, because it appears he is organized. And as most organized offenders do, sometimes they'll have a staging area other than their home. And so that they may be able to get rid of some evidence or clean up, be fired, because you can't walk up your steps to your apartment door and be covered in blood and expose yourself to your neighbors possibly seeing you in such a condition. Now, he could have cleaned up at the crime scene itself also at 1122, or he had enough foresight to plan another staging area. But like I said, there's a lot of different things organized offenders do, some better than others. But I believe when law enforcement, dark arts, another one of the key things they did was that on December the 7th, when they came out and they identified this car, they didn't keep it close to the chest. Within just, hours, basically, we placed out this bolo on this vehicle of, and when I talk about hours, I know that, we're talking several days later, but still they didn't keep it close to the chest for a month or two. That once they came into the information of this, because they went out and, as you can see here, they gathered all this digital media submissions, which is going to include video cameras, security cameras, and they was going to be looking within a certain time frame to identify vehicles that were near the crime scene during the time period that they had set the parameters for. And once they had that, and once they identified a certain vehicle, and that would have took sometimes, it would have took several days and, maybe even a couple of weeks, such as in this case. But once they got that information, they put it out there. And within hours of getting this out there, they started receiving tips. Now, this is when I believe that more than likely Kohberger came on the radar. Now, they would have also been running additional geofencing, is trying to find all the cell tower information of people that was in the area, vehicles that were in the area, trying to identify so many different things that run parallel all at the same time by having all these experts in certain areas building this database. And so now that they have a car and they have, I think they said they had 20-something thousand Elantras that they were checking in the state. But within hours of this, everyone that was local that knew of people that owned white Elantras, I feel confident that all the owners within that 10, 15, 20-mile area were called in and were identified. And I believe that he would be. And we may find that out. Could be wrong, but I believe that that him going to school just over the state line and only 10 miles from the crime scene, that he would have been, called in. And so he would have been on at least that list. And then once he's on that list, and then they start pulling in all the cell phone data and they have that list. Then you may have had people that just called him in that had been suspicious of him for other activities. And then we have to start looking at when the DNA profiles come in and from the lab work. and why did they focus and on a certain DNA profile. Of course, they'll go in there and identify every DNA profile they can as the victims. And then when they start finding the unknowns, that's where we concentrate on. You run that through the criminal database. If it doesn't come back on the CODIS, then of course you go to the next. And it appears to be that it was some type of genetic database, genealogy that brought them in to one of his family members that submitted something. And so he hits another list and he hits a key list. And so now they can go back and check. So I think they had him early on. They may not have had enough to prosecute him, but I believe that he was placed under surveillance far longer than what we thought, or he was on a short list far earlier than most of us, think. But I've always thought that he was probably on it, and I may be proven wrong, but just my opinion. With the technologies that are out there now, I believe that he was identified probably within the first 3 days of by December the 10th. If this information came out on the vehicle on the 7th, I think that he was on a short list by December the 10th. Because on December the 8th, Moscow puts out a press release that due to the volume of calls and tips leading in about for the request for information about the White 2011-2013, that within 1 day of them releasing that information, they had to create and direct all the information to the FBI call center. And that is absolutely a great thing that society and the social media can do. And I think we played a large part in this. As far as the social media, you have like Mob Crew, Grizzly. You have all these huge creators out there that have the ability to reach thousands and hundreds of thousands of views, get that information out there, and they did so. And hats off to them. Hats off to them. But then, like I said, they would have found some from the crime scene. They would have been looking for certain information, not so much that is really inside the crime scene, but they'll be looking outside that crime scene. And would they have found some evidence outside that might show that there is a injury to that individual that might be showing a shedding of his DNA profile that's not from a weapon, but it's from some type of self-inflicted injury or an injury that he could have incurred during the fights with some of the victims as they fought. And I hope that they were able to hurt him, and I believe they did. And I think that's one of the reasons he may have broke off the attack and was unable to continue, and possibly whoever inflicted those injuries on him saved the lives of those other two victims, the potential victims that were in the residence. And then you see all the evidence being brought from his residence where he lived there. They're processing and bringing stuff out. Oh, $5 super sticker. Thank you, one who sees. Appreciate it. And so when you have all that information and this has established that he's a suspect, and one of the biggest pieces of evidence, and I see where there's others that agree with me, and it's going to be this vehicle, that there's always the ability for him as a person that is in the college scene that he can say, oh, I was at that residence. My DNA profile is in that residence. I was there before. I was in a fight there before. I was injured there before. Or, I mean, it could be anything. Or I had a relationship with one of the individuals before. And so there's going to be a lot of ability for him to make those claims. Not so much if there's a lot of blood trail in there and a blood that is recent and connected and appears to be able to be linked to a fight within the residence. And not so much if there is other type of DNA material, such as something that would have come from a fight, such as someone grabbing him by his hair, pulling out hair or scratching him, and you have deep embedded skin cells under the fingernails, that is one thing. But if it's nothing that makes those descriptors, and it's just some type of individualized DNA profile, he may be able to make excuses for it. But within this vehicle, that in the middle of the night, in the dark, he gets in a fight with 4 individuals, a violent encounter. Now, he could have the opportunity to clean in the residence, and I know there's been rumors about possibly that he did do some cleaning in the residence. Don't know if those are true or not, but regardless, he wouldn't have been able to get rid of all of the DNA transfer that possibly could have been from the hair, the fiber, the blood from the residence, and he would have transferred some to his vehicle. This vehicle is going to be taken apart piece by piece. Absolutely, I believe that they're going to find, and it's going to be critical to this case. And I believe they're going to find DNA from within the residence and from the crime scene, from the victims, I'm hoping. And if that is the case and they're able to link it that way, I believe that, of course, that, closes and, the deal out there. I mean, it's a done deal. But then we look at this traffic stop that after he left, at the time that this occurred, we're talking about mid-December, that his father flew out there and agreed to come back home. Don't know if, and a lot, some people have taken great offense that now the family's involved. That may or may not be the case. This may, it's the holiday season. This may be something that he did routinely. We don't know. But regardless, his father's there with him. They're traveling back, and they get stopped by law enforcement a couple of times. In this picture here, of course, you can see Kohberger, and you see his father, but you can see that he appears to be disturbed. It's his second traffic stop in a short period of time. And then when we focus in on his right arm, what is that? Is that just a shadow? Is that a mark on his arm? Is it some type of injury, or is it just a simple stain? We don't know, but hopefully it is some type of injury, and hopefully it's some type of injury that he incurred from his encounter with the victims, and that during their that fight and for survival, that they were able to hurt him and obtain some type of DNA. And I'm hoping that is a deep arm scratch, and that's scabbing over, and that's what this is. We don't know. That's a lot of speculation, but I know it's there. Don't know what it is. It could be anything, or it could be nothing. We really don't know now, but it will be argued.
Chris is in chat.
Hey, Chris. We had a great show the other day, and good to see you here, Chris. Appreciate you. And like I said, hats off to everything that you've done for this case, and being recognized to go into News Nation. Absolutely amazing work that you do. And but with all that being said, and before we get into the questions, if you have any information on this case, like I said before, if you have information about any of the victims or any of their interactions with anybody and their concerns, we want justice for them. And the only way they can have justice is if the right offender is charged and brought to justice. Law enforcement currently believes they have the individual that is responsible for it. I have no reason to doubt that, but he is innocent until proven guilty. And if you have any information that exonerates him, absolutely, that needs to be brought to the attention of authorities also, for the fact that we want the proper individual to be brought to justice. And well, with that being said, we got any questions?
Okay. Thank you, Jennifer Rochelle, on 3 months with us.
Thank you.
That is awesome. All right, let's see here.
And something else about the white vehicle, that once he was put on a short list, and that could have been prior to, and I think it was early on. Me and Chris discussed this many times during the shows of that. I was believing that they had someone on the short list. But when they identified that vehicle and he's on that short list, once he's put under surveillance, that car is going to be recognized by law enforcement as a key piece of evidence. And they're going to keep that under as tight surveillance as they would him, for the fact that they know that there's a lookout on a vehicle matching that description. They know that how key it is and what the possibility of the genetic DNA profiles that could be inside that residence or inside that vehicle, and how key it would be. And so if they're tracking that, once Kohberger decides to leave the state, and do they have a surveillance team on him to maintain not only surveillance of him, but control of a very key piece of evidence that they probably didn't have enough information at the time to make an arrest, but would they want to protect and guard that key piece of evidence? And I absolutely believe so. And was the traffic stops just incidental traffic stops, or were they structured? We don't know. We may or may not ever know. And there's so many different reasons that those stops could have been initiated from just, enforcement of the law, or possibly checking on the welfare of the occupants. Mary Callahan, would law enforcement have photographed his body and swab BCK immediately after the SWAT raid? No, that would have happened as soon as he got to booking, but no, they wouldn't have been right then there at SWAT. You'll secure them, transport them, get them to a secured area where you can do that, and then you would execute whatever search warrants within the residence. But they would have been a separation, and there's certain steps. That type of entry at that time of day, like I said, it's very tactical, it's strategical, it's a violent of action that when you go into that situation, you're going in not only at those hours to protect yourself, but also to protect other people within that residence. And what gives the highest probability that you will be able to make a successful arrest without harming anyone, including the person that you're targeting, that the warrants are issued on. Everybody, it's a win-win-win when everybody survives those incidents, because we often see a lot of times some of those dynamic entries and use of force, and they can go bad rather quickly. All right.
Okay. All righty. And Steve, are you surprised on the quickness of the genetic genealogy to catch this guy?
If that's true, absolutely. We've seen in the last, within the last year, it's been used multiple times. And then they have other DNA advances that are, almost within hours can start matching this stuff. And I'm glad the technologies is there. And will it save lives? Absolutely.
And I'm not sure where this is, but Vicki Ann is asking for prayer for the family of her police chief who was shot and killed yesterday.
I'm sorry to hear that. Sorry to hear that.
And I'm not sure where that is, but
absolutely,
we will. All right. And Molly, at True Crime Web, unless it comes up, how many law enforcement and coordination does it take to tail him from Idaho to Pennsylvania? That must have taken some manpower to not be obvious.
There's a lot of different ways that they can, you can go low tech and put crews out there. And I believe they would have at least a few cars that, if he's under surveillance, that would have been there. Some of them would be behind him. Some of them with that they've already identified who he's with and the path that he's going to take. And you'll have your tail cars, you'll have cars ahead. You may even have air support. There's so many technologies. Plus you can have the higher end technologies of some of the tracking devices that are out there, and certain model cars that once you identify the vehicle and some of the electronics, they're easily tracked also. But I believe that if he is a suspect, which I believe he was, that they will have kept eyes on that vehicle to ensure that it's not destroyed or dumped anywhere along that route. My opinion, but
All right. And keep going here. And Dave, strange how when they stopped him in Indiana, the cop approached the passenger side of vehicle. Is this normal in Indiana?
It's far more normal now than it used to be. A lot of officers got sideswiped, and it's safer. Even the way that you park a car when you approach a vehicle from the rear, and going over to that side, whereas you're not struck by a vehicle that might be hypnotized by the blue lights. There's officers killed and people hit every year that, and that's just, if that's the way they train, no, it's nothing unusual.
And Betty, wouldn't it be something if his mama or even himself who paid to get their DNA on record?
It's interesting. I hadn't thought about
priceless.
that. Yeah, that is interesting.
And Betty again, hello all. Was it regular cops who made the traffic stop or FBI trying to rattle him?
I looked at that back vehicle. It appeared to be unmarked, so I don't know. Somebody will own up to it. I'm sure right now they're doing open. Whoever got that information, they know what department it was and they know the officers' names. And I'm sure that's going to be quite debated in the upcoming days. But I could see where that you might want to apply pressures on him to try to instigate. There's all different reasons that you might want to stop him. Like I said, sometimes it might have just been simply a traffic offense, or it could be they were checking on the welfare of the individual inside. Or the first officer saw something in the vehicle and thought that it needed to be checked up on with a second stop. Don't know.
And Molly, they said that they had 50 tactical at his house to apprehend him. I guess tactical is SWAT. Is that a large number of people? Average? It seems like a lot.
It is. I come from a relatively small SWAT unit. We probably had maybe 18 total in our department, maybe 20 when you reached out to the negotiators and some of the liaisons. But when you look at some of these, of course, you're looking at Pennsylvania and how many people do they have on those SWAT teams? But 50, counting that we don't want the possibility that as entry is made, if he's not where we think he is in the house, that we don't want him to run out through the woods or something. And so you would have multiple lines of to ensure that he's not coming out of that residence and able to flee and escape. And they appear to have accomplished that mission.
Okay.
And how he would be brought back for extradition can be a lot of different ways. I would expect more than likely they'll just private jet, but they're, some people may bring him back by vehicle, some of them by air. We just don't know which way they're going to bring him back. He may already be back. Who knows?
All right. And Mindy, do you think the Indiana police were told to stand down since the feds were on BK? I'm about positive they were all looking for that car and had to be suspicious. Thoughts?
I don't think they were told to stand down. I think that at the point that he was there, they still didn't have the key piece of DNA. I believe that if they ever were able to recognize and identify his DNA while he was in the jurisdiction, he would have never left the jurisdiction. I think that he would have stayed there. They would have arrested him. And because, you don't, if he's there, he's there. And if you have the evidence to prosecute, and I think as soon as that first DNA match came back and they were able to verify that they said, okay, that's it.
Okay.
Now they may have been able, it could have been that even it was the last 3 or 4 days or whenever he's in Pennsylvania that the final results come in. But I think that once they made, when that first lab report and the verification of maybe a second or third DNA profile, that yes, this is him, that within hours they made that entry.
All right. And Jeff, I have watched several retired LE talk about this. Many have stated sliding glass doors are the weak link in any home. That being said, they say make sure you properly secure your sliding glass doors.
Absolutely. And they are a weak link. And a lot of people, there's a lot of windows and glass and any entryways, these criminals, they find so many different ways. And the internet is a curse of how, at times, of how entry and how one can educate themselves.
Okay. And Yolanda, what if he can prove that he had been in that house before that night?
And I think that will probably be something that will be, and he may have been. We don't know. He may have been in there. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons that he could be in the house, either as a possibility as a guest of someone within the house, all the way to the point that he may have been in the house as part of a gaining unlawful entry prior to casing out the place. We just don't know. There's so much that you could speculate about that.
I hope I'm not missing anybody.
Oh, it don't. Mrs. Steve works hard.
All right. And IMS 93. Do you think the goal was to take out all the girls, but BK got into an unexpected fight with one of the victims, causing him to leave the scene? Or did he not know about the other two?
And there's been a lot of interesting information about what the other two are, because we know the ones that had just arrived back into town, and we know about the girls that lived there, the 4 girls that were residents there. And then, of course, you had one of the girls that just came back in, wasn't supposed to be there. And then you had Ethan that happened to be there at night. But from the digital footprints and the geofencing of when they run all that data, they're going to know who he was stalking, if he's stalking at all. They're going to know which individuals he was in contact with by being in proximity of. And that information will be key.
BK's uncle had DNA. We're not going there.
Yeah.
Are we?
Yeah. It don't. Yeah. I mean, that.
Do you want it?
Yeah, you can.
Okay, not now, but it'll show up at some point.
Yeah.
Okay. And Kathleen, the surveillance videos from residents are in businesses crucial input.
It will be,
Absolutely.
because they're going to be looking at locations that everyone, when they do the victimology, they're going to know everything about their habits, their shopping habits, work habits, where they're at, and they're going to have their digital imprint from their cell phone usage and devices, study halls, and all the other information that college students in their daily lives. And within that, you're going to have the cross supporting evidence of digital cameras that are scattered throughout communities, in businesses, on streets, traffic cams, door cams, all different types of security systems, that they'll be able to look at those systems. And then they'll be able to look at also with the offender, when was he in the areas at the same time, and is his presence noted on those same cameras? And yes, it's going to be extremely critical. We live in a different age than when we were children, the older generation. The younger people out there, they're living in a age of being, constantly able to be tracked.
And Ann, how soon do you think they were on to him? It's beginning to seem like it was very early on, but that would have been risky leaving him loose, given his potential violence.
I think that he was probably on some short list, not saying that he was the only one, because there were probably multiple people that would have been having a white Elantra vehicle within a certain area, and maybe within certain times that the victims were. But I think that he was tipped in probably by the 10th. That's just a guess on my part, due to the volume of information that you can see that law enforcement says that they had to turn it over to the FBI on some of the collection of some of the tips regarding that vehicle. We even saw it with the Delphi case. I think Rich Allen was turned in within the first 3 days or so, but he turned himself in.
That's awkward. All right. And Dark Arts, do you believe that asking for help from the public overall helps more than hurts?
It does. I absolutely do. Now, law enforcement is learning, and the social media is learning, and there's some agencies absolutely embrace this ability to get that information out there quickly to thousands of eyes. And I agree with it. It helps give confidence to the communities and makes them aware of how much, are they in danger? What precautions should they take? What should they be alert and looking for? And but I absolutely believe that it is that if I had two choices, I'd rather inform the public of the potential of a threat than to hide it from them.
Okay. And this will do nicely. Why do you think none of the parents came forward knowing they had an Elantra that son had with him 10 minutes from the crime scene?
We don't know they didn't. That is a possibility. And hopefully that is the case. But I mean, I just don't know yet.
Okay, and history. Do you think the traffic stops in Indiana were LE following him, confirming his ID, or something like that? Perhaps car noticed at toll booths.
I believe that they would have noticed him at the toll booths, of course. But if they had him identified by the 10th, and I believe he traveled several days later after the 10th, that they're already aware of him. But like I said, that's just my opinion. But let's say that they didn't have him identified on the 10th. They didn't identify him until he went through a toll booth. That's absolutely possible also. And once they identified him, they wanted to make sure who is in that car. That is as logical a possibility also. That, okay, we've been looking for this car. We want him. And now we know where he's at. When his vehicle is found or located, let's initiate a traffic stop, identify who's in the vehicle, release it, and follow it. I mean, that's a possibility also. Absolutely. Good thought.
And Nancy, do you think there's any camera surveillance of when and where the suspect arrived at his apartment in Washington? We haven't heard much about any evidence.
Oh, I hope so. I absolutely hope that is the case. And at the time frame of when the crime occurred, there's probably no better time to be able to track a vehicle than at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning prior to rush hours.
And Becky, approximately when does Steve believe he will be back in Idaho? What? The guy. Oh, BK, not you.
Oh, okay, I got you. Because the reason that took me by surprise is that I will be going to Idaho at some point, but not regarding this case. And I thought, how did you know that? But no, I think he'll be, of course, they got within 10 days. He may be on an airplane now. He may have already arrived, or he may be shipped out the next day or two. Law enforcement won't share that information until after he's safely in another facility. Yeah, actually, Chris and I were talking. I can't remember if it was today or yesterday that we were discussing Idaho on a couple or three different cases.
All right. And Perry, UK True Crime. Mm-hmm. Do you think they'll find forensic evidence in the vehicle, even if cleaned?
Absolutely. If that blood profile and that DNA is in there, I believe there will be. You don't fight four individuals in any type of close quarter battle in darkness and able to get back to your vehicle without bringing something from that environment.
And Becky 76, does he think BK kept the knife as a trophy?
It's extremely possible that he did. I hope that he did. Now, if they ever find it or not may depend on his cooperation.
Single Mama 4, what was his motives? In my opinion, I've got my own opinion, but asking yours.
Well, when you're talking about psychopaths and their fantasy world of what fixated him on any one individual, it could be a lot of different reasons. But, once they, like BTK spoke of, that he would have multiple potential victims that he was tracking at any one point. And then whenever he struck, he picked one of them for whatever reason. And so trying to interpret and understand exactly what was his fantasy and what made him pick which victim and why for that date, don't know. But it's probably, there's some base that, being a psychopath, being a predator, sexual motivations, there's a lot of different reasons of why these offenders do this stuff.
Hold on 1 second.
Mm-hmm. Good, bad, or otherwise?
No. All right. And Dark Arts, what is the story with the other two roommates? Did they get home late?
I think they got there earlier. And, like I said, we don't know exactly what caused him to not locate them, or were they locked behind doors and he didn't want to force entry? Did something occur in the residence that struck fear in him that they may have called 911, or that it took longer than he thought for him to commit the crimes that he did? Was he injured? Did he realize that he was shedding DNA through an injury? Or was he just absolutely exhausted from a confrontation of fighting four individuals? There's a lot of different reasons that might have saved their lives.
And Julie, why did they get pulled over?
I think one of them, that second trooper, something about with there's interaction with some type of other vehicle he's following too closely. With a semi or something, I think is what the trooper mentioned. It was some type of interaction of because he explained how far behind the vehicle he needed to be rather than following that close. And he went up there and stated his reasons and had his interaction and went about his way.
Okay.
Mrs. Steve's got all her devices.
I'm doing multiple duties today.
She's multitasking.
All right. And the Bible group, great to see you.
Hey.
And was this BCK's first murder?
I'm hoping. I hope there's not others, but it doesn't mean there's not. He's at a critical point in his life and his studies, and you can see the direction of possibilities that you know, him and what some of the other serial offenders during that period as they develop. But yes, he's within a critical time where some of these offenders became prolific. I think Ted Bundy was that exact age on some of his victims.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And Kathleen, what is your take on the blood below siding on foundation? They didn't remove siding. Could be his blood as he's leaving the scene?
No, that's a lot. If that is blood, which I don't know, but if that is blood, that was a lot of blood. But no, I wouldn't believe that would be his. That would be more than likely from one of the victims inside the residence that's in the proximity of that. If it is blood, that would have gravity will cause those passive flows.
And do you think they put a tracking device on his car or physically followed him or both?
If they had identified him as a potential early on, yes, I think they would have done both. Because, like I said, that vehicle was critical evidence.
All right. And since they were following him, can Ellie put an audio video bug in his car? Is that legal?
If they had enough probable cause prior to him leaving, and they had enough probable cause to put such a device on that vehicle, then they would have obtained the proper paperwork for that. Don't know if they did or not, but it is a possibility.
And Kimberly asked the same question about placing the tracker on the car. And Bam, see? I'm not sure about that one. Would the hilt, if that's what you call it, on that type of knife prevent his hand from slipping and accidentally cutting himself?
There's a lot of different types of blade guards up there that will keep your hand from going up there. Whatever type of weapon he chose, did it have that? Don't know. Law enforcement would have a better understanding, because if as the knife becomes blood stained and it's used in different areas, it can have different imprint patterns, and you'll know what that type of guards between the handle and the knife blade itself that might what the impressions may look like due to stain transfers through the blood pattern analysis that you would be able to see, and on the victims, even from their skin to clothing, that you may be able to identify some of those guards. And the guards themselves can cause injuries. But if he didn't have a guard that kept his hand from going up there on that blade, yeah, his hand would get up there on that knife, or while he was fighting, and the potential of in a knife fight that while you're attempting to cut them or something, and they force your arm, your hand over, and you cut yourselves, extremely possible.
All right. Oh. And one who sees, Steve, do you believe he's the one? I mean, to go into someone's house and kill 4 people, that's just crazy to me.
When I watched the police chief, the confidence level of what he was saying, and that he was absolutely sure they had the right guy. I'm law enforcement. I trust my life to other law enforcement officers when they tell me things. And so I'll trust him that he's telling me the truth and telling the world the truth that they've got the guy. And so I'll believe that, but my belief in it doesn't mean it's so. The courts will have to make that final determination.
Okay, let's see here.
What's going on there?
I'm just trying to figure this out.
She's got a bunch of stuff there.
Yeah, this is overload to me. So,
yeah,
you know, I'm cruising
good for you.
because this is one that you'll never get in, apparently.
Okay. Well, we'll do as much as we can. We're here to try to do as best we can for you guys, and it just takes a while for us to get caught up with it. We appreciate everybody being here. We appreciate the support, the views. Share it with everybody, and because it is something that that is important that we learn from this case of awareness of what type of individuals are out there in every profession. You would think that you would have nothing to fear from an individual of this level of intelligence, and was what you would think was on a path to a great career. And then you find out that it's possible that he is the one responsible for these murders. Absolutely unreal.
Okay. And True Crime with Shannon. Steve, do you believe he has committed crimes we are yet unaware of?
Well, you hear information from so many different people that have describing his habits, that he made women uncomfortable, and also that he was a person that was up late at night. There's other type of crimes that certain individuals with certain, psychopaths, that they have certain tendencies. And would he have committed other crimes? I believe so. The severity of those could be anything from being a peeping Tom to burglary to certain types of assaults that he may be involved in.
Well, I think you just hit a milestone, my man.
What's that?
I think you're at 5,000 subs.
No. Are we?
Baby Steve says you are.
Well, guys, I really appreciate that we've reached 5,000 subs. It means a lot to me, and I appreciate the community out there, and absolutely humbling.
It is. Absolutely. So thank y'all very, very much.
We got a lot of things to do with this platform, and as we move out and work the cold cases, and Chris comes on board and helps me getting the information and gathering information and working this stuff. I have a very busy schedule coming up in the next year, and can't do it without this community, and I thank you.
So what does she send this for? Oh yeah, 5,000 subscribers.
Thank you.
Baby Steve sent that to you.
Baby Steve.
All right. And Mary Lou, how is it beneficial to him to waive extradition?
It's not like he can sit there and fight it. You're not going to win extradition in this date and time. They will have just had court hearings there, just come here. At least you won't be, but there's nothing for him to gain by trying to fight extradition in his home state. It would take, the extraditions are really just almost formalities, in such a crime that has occurred so recently with certain amount of evidence. And if he knows that evidence is true or otherwise, there's no need for it to, he knows that there's nothing he could do, especially with his training. Congratulations. Thank you. This will do nicely. Thank you.
I just love that name.
I do too.
All right. And let's see here. Digital. If BK's uncle had DNA in CODIS, would CODIS hit on a close family match, or would Ellie still have to use specialized genealogy company?
That is a great question. I don't know how far out and how many markers it is on that, but that is something that that's a interesting question. I don't know how far out and what markers it would take on that. I'll have to look at that.
That would be some good research.
It is. And somebody out there may know that answer right now.
They might. They just might. Okay, I have to go back over here. Alexa. Oh,
Congratulations on 5K to you and Mrs. Steve. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and expertise with you. And thank you, Alexa, for doing the same.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
All right, and let's see. Okay. And Cincy, if he says he's been in the house, will that be when the survivors can testify that he has never been in the home, or that he was a stalker if they were aware someone was stalked?
It'd be hard for them to ever say that, no, he's never been within the residence. It's hard, to always say that there's, that you're there 24/7, 365. And, how long were they there within that residence over a 5-year period? Because, what type of DNA are we talking about? Are we talking about touch DNA? Or are we talking about actual blood DNA that's mixed in with the victim's blood DNA? And if that's the case, of course, it's self-explanatory and wouldn't even be arguable. But we just don't know exactly what type of DNA they're looking at right now.
CJK, did you see the cuts, gashes on his right arm? It's visible in the video of being pulled over the second time.
I saw that, and like I said, is that what it is? Don't know. I don't know if it's a shadow. Don't know if it's a gash. Don't know if it's a deep scratch that's in the healing process. Do people get injured that have nothing to do with any type of crime? Working on a farm, I stay injured quite a bit, and
yes, he does.
And so, but him being a teacher's assistant, he probably not into. Deb, thank you. $10 on the donation for 5,000 subs. Appreciate that. Means a lot to us.
Thank you, Deb.
But what caused that injury? And I'm hoping, like I said, that one of the victims were able to get some of his DNA. And if they recover it from the fingernail bed, done deal.
Oop, same one. And Nancy, do you think there's any camera surveillance from when the suspect arrived at his apartment in Washington the day of the murder?
I'm hoping so. And like we spoke earlier, they will be looking for that. And they may even be going almost door to door, attempting to locate that information. And also from traffic cameras, every type of digital system out there, they'll be trying to get that information.
And
your blue light's on.
Whoops. I love my blue light. And Perry, UK True Crime, you may have discussed, but do you think the vehicle stops carried out were connected to the case somehow or coincidental?
I think if he's being followed, I think that they were connected in some manner. I believe so. Purdue, good to see you, Purdue. Thank you for your 1999 super sticker.
And give sugars to Mr. W.
Yes, Winston.
Hey, my buddy. All right. Let's see here. We've already done that one. And I'm not sure what that is. K-Ran, can you explain governor's warrants?
I don't know if they're just talking about a fugitive warrant from one state to another that the governor has requested that he issued and signed it, and it's coming back to another state. I don't know exactly what the definition here in Georgia. I couldn't tell you. That probably be, I'll look that up, but logically it's probably something along those lines. Dark Arts, $20 super. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
One second.
That's awesome.
It's still going.
That's awesome.
Okay.
I'm going to be making a trip up in Iowa in just a few weeks, so appreciate all the support.
And Becky 76, how would Steve rate LE on this case between 1 and 10?
I'm so happy right now, about 11.
I think she said between 1 and 10.
Somewhere around 11. Because, like I said, I believe they outdid themselves in the investigation, and knowing how much chaos can be and the pressures involved and the manner and way they released information constantly, it's exemplary, and I give them kudos for everything they've done.
All right. And Susan Purdy looks like a member for 1 month. Thank you so very much.
Appreciate that.
We appreciate it. Let's see here.
And actually, our members tomorrow night, we're going to be having a members only for the Commanders. And then also tomorrow night, I do my
you start your
morning watch. I'll have my first after midnight show tomorrow night.
And that's going to be what, 12:01?
12:01. If everything goes well, I can get this Google machine working.
Purdue RN, member 3 months. Wow. Thank y'all so much.
Yep, appreciate it. So if anybody up after midnight tomorrow night, we're going to sit and talk. It'll be a different format than this.
You'll be without me, so.
Yeah. Mrs. Steve's going to be.
I'll be sleeping.
Yes.
All right. JDR, thank you so much.
What JDR do? It didn't come up.
Oh, it didn't come up?
No, it didn't come up on the screen.
Wonder why it's not coming up. He gave you a 279, but wonder why that's not coming up.
I don't know.
Oh my goodness, we're wearing it out. Okay, so let's come up here.
Let's see if that pops up. Oh God, are we off screen?
Wonder why it's not working.
I don't know.
Can you?
Are we still there? Let me see. Give me a 1 if we're still there, guys.
Do you have any stars over there?
You got 8.
Okay, so click one of those and I will go jump.
While she's doing that.
Yeah,
so
I'm coming back in.
Her computer shut down again. They use the governor's plane to extradite Lori to Idaho. They think they will use the governor's plane. If so, I believe so. I didn't know that. That's some great information. Appreciate that.
Oh, I lost Wi-Fi.
Okay. Do you think he would have recorded the crime? No. Is it possible? Yes. And if he did, then of course they locate that. Once again, done deal. But that's such a high risk for such an organized. But there's been stranger things. Mr. Steve, do you think he hid weapons someplace he could later revisit it rather than throwing it in the water? And if so, do you think it's likely in Idaho, Washington area, then taking it to Pennsylvania? If he had plans on coming back, yes, I believe that if he's keeping it as a trophy, it's at some location that he can revisit and have the potential of going in and getting that knife in the future. And now, let's see. Do you think the girls possibly were aware of BK that night? Could that explain why so many calls to the boyfriends late in the morning if they fell unsafe? Actually, I do. I think that when we look at what happened at the grub truck, when there was some interactions between one of the individuals, I think his name was Jack, and the other guy, that they were discussing that he was just escorting the girls for their safety. Was there something that the girls, through their intuition or something that had occurred or they were fearful of, and that had raised their level of alertness and wanted a male to be present at all time? Is that possible? Absolutely. And is it possible that when they got home, they were unaware that Ethan was downstairs and they still wanted a male in the residence, absolutely. Any of that is possible. Let's see here. As she gets back on board here.
Okay, so his name or her name, its name is unabashedly.
Okay.
And I use phonetically pronunciation in my name. Woo!
All right.
That's a good one.
Do you want to be doing that while I do this?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I'm back if you want me to do it. It's up to you.
Does anybody think it would be exonerated? Well, I mean, he's innocent until proven guilty. His attorney says he will be. So attorneys work towards that end. Is it possible? Absolutely. And we have to respect the court systems until it occurs. All right. Do you think if they had enough probable cause to place a bug or tracker, they would have arrested him instead to preserve potential evidence? No, there's always that possibility, but there's a different, of the probable cause of the vehicle. It's far easier to get probable cause for an arrest, but when you're talking about the homicides of 4 individuals, at what point did they suspect and know that Kohberger is the offender? They may have at some point only thought that he might possibly be one of the occupants of the vehicle, because you remember from some of the discussions and some of the releases, they talk about occupant or occupants. And is that still the case? Could be, but probably not with the warrant of him for the murder of 4. All right. Hello, chat. Kai home, Steve and Mrs. Steve. You think the date he committed the murders was significant? No. It is coincidental. There's so many dates and so many times that when you look back on the news release that November the 13th, and everybody highlights the 13th, and we see a lot of murders are committed on the 13th. But is it just coincidence? I don't know. Or did he do it for that reason? Don't know. Do we think they're already transporting? I think law enforcement called the presser to deflect the attention. That's possible. Don't know, but that is extremely possible. That once that they knew, especially if the governor had used his plane prior to for transporting and bringing people in, that if they are given enough notice that he's going to waive, which I believe it was in the news at least a day or so, that he was going to waive extradition. Question: would the Idaho police have the videos from where they were pulled over, Steve, so they can see the gashes on? Yes, they'll have all of that. And if those are gashes or if it's just a stain, or, I mean, there's so many different things that it's so hard to tell exactly what it is. And, or is it an old scar? Don't know. Have no idea. Are you able to mark them as I do this?
Yeah. Can't you see them adding to you?
No, I can't. So this may be, we may have discovered a new way then. The Google machine between me and her. True crime. Is it easier to hide a knife in water or shove down tip first in the soil? I don't know if he would have buried it or if he would have simply hid it in some type of wall or some type of box and buried it. There's so many different ways of disposing and being able to go back and see a trophy. Just have no idea. But there's a lot of knives that are, people cross bridges that they just simply toss them over. And will they do certain or do searches in some of those areas to eliminate that? Have they picked up when he left the scene? Were they able to track his movements across certain bodies of water? And will they do that? It's extremely possible they may do some searches. Have you looked into summer wells? Not at this time. Right now, I've got this month. I'll be going up into Iowa again. At some point, I hope to, but we're so far behind on the Evansdale murders right now, and trying to get out to Texas on Amber's case also, and it just takes so much time. And but I hope at some point to be able to get up there on summer wells. All right, true crime web. He's driving out of state. Isn't it automatically flight risk? Yes, but sometimes you just can't stop it. I mean, if you don't have the probable cause, you don't have it. You know, and there's certain things that you just have to wait for. You have to wait for those lab reports. You have to wait for the analysis and all of the digital information to be analyzed, and all the information to be compiled, whereas you can establish probable cause. The Constitution guarantees us that. And so if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. Does BK have choice on mode of transport back to Idaho? I don't believe he would. You know, I believe that whatever, you know, you're in the custody of, and I believe they can get you there. Now, if he has some type of medical condition that wouldn't allow him to be flown back, that may be different. But he would have to establish some type of medical condition that wouldn't allow flight.
Can you fly if you're a vegan?
I don't see why you couldn't. Do you think they'll check rest areas for weapons such as back of toilet tanks or trash? I'm sure that they'll try to look anywhere that they can identify that he's been. If they show that he's been at a certain area, they'll go in there and try to identify him. Have the number of targets been proven yet? No, other than we know that at some point we have 4 people that were targeted. Either they were targeted when they were discovered within the residence, or they were targeted prior to. But every victim at some point became a target of, has been charged, Kohberger. And could that be days or minutes? We really don't know right now.
All right.
All right, guys. Is that it?
You are it.
Well, guys, I appreciate everybody being.
No, Becky. Once in Idaho, will he be put on suicide watch?
I believe so. Absolutely. He'll be watched as intently as anyone has ever been, and until they can get him tried and get him into the prison system. And that's exactly what has and needs to be done. But we want to thank everybody. And like I said, tomorrow we'll be having for our commanders a members meeting, 7 o'clock. And then at 12:01 Thursday morning, we're going to have the morning watch. That'll be the initial show. And it'll just be a free for all call. You know, I'll cover just whatever topics that anyone just wants to discuss, from some of the recent news to discussing cases that I'm currently involved in, and also, you know, Delphi, Evansdale, just whatever anyone wants to talk about, we'll discuss.
Anna just gave us a good one. Expect the suspect to go for psych evaluation as soon as he gets there.
Yes.
That would be a good one.
And they will, for several reasons. Sometimes they do that for classification of inmates. Although violent offenders such as there'll be a special section, and I expect that for a certain time period he'll be in isolation.
All right, you're good.
All right, guys, y'all stay safe out there. I look forward to seeing y'all tomorrow, and y'all. And as our new schedule and as the year goes on, I appreciate everyone that donated tonight. I appreciate all my members, my viewers, my subs. All of that helps support this channel and allows us to go out there and do what we want to do and have an impact. It helps on our Cyclop system that Mrs. Steve works on so much. And also as we work in these cold cases couldn't do it without you. And we're deeply appreciate each and every one of you. But y'all stay safe out there and see you soon.
Love y'all.